Welcome back. You're with us on Financial Quotient, and today we're discussing all the legalities surrounding finance and financial well-being that women must be aware of. And we just had Bijal touch upon the very important concept of Sridhan before the break. So Neha, I want to bring you in on this. Weigh in on what Bijal said. That how do you ensure that the Sridhan is in the lady's name? A. And be even beyond Sridhan, we are living in very different changing times where marriages may be made in heaven, but we don't know the duration for which they last, right? So in such a situation, how does one navigate, the concept of joint assets, joint bank accounts? It's not that simple anymore.
I totally agree with you over there, Surbhi. So nowadays, with earnings, when the spouses are earning together, they put their assets together, they buy assets together, it gets a little muddled up. The ownership gets split between two people. So, for a woman to secure herself, it is very important that she, first of all, has a complete record or documentation of her Sridhan or her assets. As Bijal pointed out earlier, Sridhan is actually everything that is coming to you before, after, or during the marriage, or anything that is earned by you. So it is pertinent for a woman to ensure that she takes care of this particular property. It's her responsibility to ensure that documentation is kept safely, the records are kept safely of her this property, which is the Sridhan, and ensure that these assets are belonging to her. If there is joint ownership, this ownership can be questioned.
So, okay, let me ask you this, Neha. Would Sridhan mean only the jewelry that is gifted? Is it by either parties, parents or not? What all comprises Sridhan, and what's the time duration? I mean, is there like a 1 year window before and after marriage? Or how do you
No,
define Sridhan?
so Sridhan is everything, everything that you are getting from the time you get married, while you are married, after you have been married to that person, anything that you receive from your father or mother or relatives or in-laws or friends, anything that you earn, any property that you inherit, any income that you receive from this property, which is known as the Sridhan,
Okay.
all this is Sridhan.
Oh, okay. As long as it's in your name, uh, this is literally your property, and it cannot be if there is a, let's say, if there's an encumbrance, or if there is some sort of a situation with the banks, and this Sridhan cannot be brought into reckoning. Is that the right way to look at it?
That's the right way.
Okay, so pretty important for women to keep that in mind. So, ladies, I mean, while we're on the subject of marriage, Bijal, any additional thoughts here? Married life, and when you're looking at joint planning, joint assets, how to be joint and yet ensure your own security and financial safety. What would your thoughts be?
So, Surbhi, here I would say that, for women, it is very important that if at all they are contributing to any family asset, it is important that their name is actually put in the papers for that asset itself, as well as whatever her share is. Because if at all you have a situation wherein the woman has, say, contributed to 80% of that particular asset and the husband has contributed to just 20, and in a situation where that 80-20 ratio has not been clearly laid out, the law will deem it to be a 50-50.
Hmm.
So that's an important consideration to note that if you are contributing to an asset, do ensure that your contribution and your ratio of your share in that property in itself is very clearly defined. Another important point, as I would say here, is that India does not really have a property of community property law, which essentially means that property owned by the couple post marriage is not deemed to be 50-50% jointly owned, irrespective of whose name it is in. So let us assume, just for the sake of an example, that a couple has essentially bought a property, say in the UK. In an unfortunate event where the husband essentially passes away, and let us assume he has not really made a will, the property in itself will actually go to his wife. Now, this may not really be what our Hindu succession law or our personal succession law in India really says. What is important to note that in marriage, or for that matter in demise, in countries where there is a community property law, the property is deemed to be equal. And
Hmm.
to that extent, if at all it is not the intention for it to be equal, it should be very clearly spelled out.
Got it. And that brings
That's
us,
what I
yeah,
would.
no, I completely got it. And, great points that you've raised there, which brings us back to where we really started, the need to have a will, a document that explicitly states what the intention is with respect to assets, whether they're, immovable property assets or whether they're financial assets. So Neha, help us out here. I mean, when it comes to creating a will, first of all, I mean, it has to be, as you said, an open and honest, transparent conversation. What else should be kept in mind, given that inheritance laws have changed and now daughters have equal rights as son when it comes to ancestral property?
So see, ancestral property laws got a boost in 2005 when they gave women equal power or equal share as the men. So before 2005, the law stated, and I'm going to be rough on the edges when I talk about it. The law stated that any asset which is ancestral in nature, which is coming down from ancestors, that is basically real estate or property, will go only to men and not to women folk. So sons will get the asset or they will inherit the assets, women will not. However, the change has been brought in, the amendment has been brought into the Hindu Succession Act in 2005, where it is clearly empowering the women to get a benefit, equal benefit as the sons in the ancestral properties. Now, this is very important criteria. Now, no more people can go ahead and will their ancestral properties. Ancestral property, everybody is getting an equal right in the property. Earlier, it wasn't there. A woman was only getting a right in her father's self-acquired assets and not the ancestral assets. So it becomes very important now to have a will and to mention the assets which are owned by or owned or acquired by an individual, and mention who's going to inherit these assets, in what ratio. You can mention what the ancestral asset is, but then it is going to go equally between all the kids of the family.
Okay, got that. Bijal, we're, I mean, almost out of time here, but come in on this, on inheritance and will. What are the things that women should keep in mind? Also, when they're looking at, their own succession, what are the important things to remember, given that we just discussed that you might have nominated someone, but that individual may never get the asset if the will is not in place?
Absolutely. So here, a will is a must-have document and required, in any situation, because you may not have your own assets, but you may really inherit assets. So to that extent, every woman should really create her own will. To the extent that the property values are extremely large, there are more sophisticated tools of planning which a woman can really undertake and undergo. And that is something which I would urge women to understand their assets, not only their self acquired, but also their assets which they are inheriting, either from their parents, from their in laws, from their husband, before really, diving into which mode of succession you really want to go into. If at all the woman does believe that family matters and the family is really already at a tug of war, then in that situation it is more important for you to be absolutely transparent and create a structure which essentially is not left to the courts to really decide, and the family members can really receive the assets without really any court interference. So to that extent, a will properly drafted, along with perhaps a trust in a situation where the asset base is pretty large, is absolutely essential.
All right, ladies, I know we've only scratched the surface, but I think the endeavor here has been to at least start that conversation. So whoever's listening can go back, take legal advice, and start looking at a lot of these finer nuances that ensure that assets stay, they last, and wealth keeps growing. Thank you very much. Your inputs are much appreciated, and I'm sure that they will be of great use to all of our viewers as well. Well, thanks to both Neha and Bijal for being on the show. And thank you, viewers, for being with us throughout this series on Financial Quotient. It's a wrap.